Welcome to the Crazy Alchemist podcast, where alchemy, occultism, and strange history come alive.
Everyone has heard of the Freemasons. Most people couldn't tell you what they actually do. Freemasonry is the world's largest and oldest fraternal organization. Somewhere between 2 and 6 million men are members worldwide. They meet in buildings called lodges, use symbols from stonemasonry, the square, the compass, the level, and they advance through a system of degrees, each involving a ritual. You cannot simply sign up. Someone who is already a Mason has to vouch for you. Once you're in, you move through 3 degrees. The first is entered apprentice, the second is fellow craft, the third and most important is master mason. The first 2 degrees are relatively straightforward, moral instruction wrapped in the symbolism of building tools. The square teaches integrity, the level teaches equality, the plumb line teaches uprightness. The 3rd degree is different. It is not a lesson, it is a drama. To become a master mason, you reenact a killing. The story goes like this. King Solomon is building the temple in Jerusalem. His master architect is a man named Hiram Abiff, who holds the secret knowledge needed to complete the work. 3 apprentices want that knowledge. They corner Hiram and demand the secrets. He refuses. The first strikes him across the throat with a rule. The second drives a square into his chest. The third crushes his skull with a maul. They bury the body on a hillside. Solomon discovers Hiram is missing. He sends out search parties. They find the grave. But the secrets Hiram carried are lost because only he knew them. Solomon replaces them with substitutes, new words and signs, which Freemasons have been passing down ever since. The candidate plays the role of Hiram. You are blindfolded, symbolically struck, laid down, and then raised from the grave by the grip of a master mason. This is the central moment of the entire tradition. Everything before it is preparation. Everything after it builds on it. So where does this story come from? The Testament of Solomon, a text dating to at least the 1st through 3rd century, Solomon doesn't build the temple with human labor alone. A demon named Orneus is draining the life force of a young worker. Solomon prays for help. The archangel Michael delivers a ring engraved with a pentagram. This ring gives Solomon power over demons. He binds them one by one and forces them to cut stone, haul materials, and build the temple. The secret knowledge in this version is not architectural. It is the knowledge of how to command demons. The Babylonian Talmud tells a different version. Solomon needs the shamir, a supernatural worm that cuts stone without iron tools, because the temple must not be built with weapons. The demon king Ashmedai knows where to find it. Solomon's general captures Ashmedai using a chain inscribed with God's name. Ashmedai serves Solomon, but when Solomon makes the mistake of handing over his ring, Ashmedai hurls him across the land and takes the throne. The Quran has yet another version. Suleiman commands jinn to build monuments and dive for pearls. When he dies, leaning on his staff, the jinn keep working because they don't realize he's dead. Only when a termite eats through the staff and his body falls do they discover the king is gone. 3 religions, 3 versions, all agree on the core. Solomon built the temple using supernatural power controlled through divine authority, and that power came with a price. This tradition is not just literary. Archaeologists have found thousands of Aramaic incantation bowls invoking the seal ring of Solomon to bind demons. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain exorcistic texts that already use the framework of naming and binding spirits. The Freemasons built their entire ritual system around Solomon's temple, but their version strips out the oldest and most documented part, the ring, the demons, the supernatural construction. What remains is a murder mystery about a single architect. Now, where did Freemasonry as an organization come from? Freemasons tell 2 main stories. Neither holds up. The first is the craft origin. Medieval stonemasons were among the most mobile workers in Europe. A cathedral could take 50, 100, even 200 years to build. When a building phase ended, masons packed their tools and moved to the next site. The lodge was a physical structure, a lean-to or shed on the building site where masons cut stone out of the weather. Each lodge had rules for admission, conduct, and quality. When a mason arrived at a new site, he needed to prove he was qualified. Recognition signs and secret words probably originated here, not as mystical secrets, but as proof of credentials. The Standard story says these working lodges gradually admitted non-masons, gentlemen, and intellectuals, and the craft guild became a philosophical society. The problem is there's a gap right in the middle. We have medieval records of stonemason guilds. We have 18th century records of philosophical lodges. What we don't have is anything documenting the transition. David Stevenson, a historian at the University of Aberdeen, found that Scottish lodges were never purely operative lodges that gradually let gentlemen in. They were hybrid institutions from the start. Douglas Knoop and G.P. Jones went further. There is no evidence that medieval masons ever assigned symbolic meanings to their tools. The idea that the square means morality, that the compass means boundaries, was an 18th century creation. The second origin story is more dramatic: the Crusaders, the Knights Templar. In 1737, a man named Chevalier Ramsay spoke before the Grand Lodge of France and claimed Freemasonry descended from Crusader knights who built fortifications in the Holy Land. Within a few years, other Masons made it specific. The Crusaders became the Knights Templar. The Templars were a Catholic military order founded around 1119. They protected pilgrims, answered only to the Pope, and built a network of fortifications and churches across 2 continents. They also developed one of the first international banking systems. A pilgrim could deposit money in London and withdraw it in Jerusalem using a letter of credit. They lent money to kings. They were monks, soldiers, and bankers at the same time. On Friday, October 13, 1307, Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of every Templar in France. The charges were heresy. Under torture, many confessed. The order was dissolved in 1312. The last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in 1314. The popular theory says some knights escaped to Scotland, hid inside stonemason lodges, and their traditions became Freemasonry. The Templar Masonic connection was first proposed around 1751 by a German baron named Karl Gotthelf von Hund. He could never produce a single document linking the medieval Templars to 18th century lodges. In 1782, at the Congress of Wilhelmsbad, delegates from lodges across Europe debated the Templar connection for 30 sessions. Then they voted to officially abandon the claim. Freemasons themselves threw out their own origin myth barely 30 years after it had been invented. But there is a real connection between the Templars and stone construction, just not the one the conspiracy theories describe. Between 1050 and 1350, France built 80 cathedrals, 500 large churches, and tens of thousands of parish churches. More stone was quarried in those 3 centuries than in the entire history of ancient Egypt. The Paris Basin poured 21.5% of its regional GDP into church construction for 150 years. Parish collection plates didn't pay for that. Credit did. Aaron of Lincoln, who lived from roughly 1123 to 1186, was the wealthiest man in Norman England. He simultaneously financed 9 Cistercian abbeys, Lincoln Cathedral, Peterborough Abbey, and St. Albans. The Abbey of Saint Bening in Dijon borrowed money at 65% annual interest for building. The church had banned Christians from charging interest, but it was generating insatiable demand for credit through its building programs. Jewish lenders filled the most visible part of that gap. The Templars inflated principal amounts, charged currency exchange margins, and took estates as management fees. The Italian banking houses developed even more sophisticated instruments. Everyone was lending, everyone was disguising it. The people with the deepest, longest, most profitable relationship with stonemasons were not other stonemasons. They were the people lending money so the stones could be cut. The Templars were bankers, builders, and hosts of masons all at once. In Paris, stonemasons shared quarters with the Templars. The financiers and the builders were physically next to each other day after day. The Templars were destroyed in 1307, and the reason was debt, not heresy. Philip IV owed them too much. So the Masonic legend about the Templars is wrong, but not completely wrong. There was a real connection, just not through secret rituals passed down through centuries, through money. The origin stories are legends, but legends tend to encode something real. Solomon's Temple, the Crusades, the Templars, medieval building, sacred geometry, all point toward the same place, where sacred construction meets financial power. Strip away the origin stories, and what remains, a network, a very specific kind of network, one that creates trust between people who would otherwise have no reason to trust each other. The ritual creates the trust enables the business sustains the network. Whether the year is 1200 or 2025, the mechanism is the same. Where does Freemasonry come from? We don't fully know. The paper trail starts in Scotland around 1598. The origin stories don't hold up. Every one was created centuries after the period it describes. The Solomonic tradition is real, spanning thousands of years and at least 3 religions. The financial connections hold up. The gaps are real. This article doesn't tell you what Freemasonry is. It tells you what the documents show and where they run out. What you do with all of that is up to you. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might find it interesting.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to visit crazyalchemist.com for more intriguing content and follow Crazy Alchemist on Instagram and Facebook to stay connected.